my name is Carol Hassler, and I'm a librarian at the Wisconsin State Law Library. In this webinar, we're going to go over some quick tips to get you started with legal research and show you a few examples. One of the biggest hurdles when you're getting started with legal research is juggling the large list of potential sources. Understanding the sources of law is important, and a quick reference can help. You can always go online, or you can add a state-specific research guide to your collection. This is just one of the guides available for Wisconsin, and there are several sources online too, including law library websites and the American Association of Law Libraries Legal Research Toolkit, which has a quick guide to frequently used Wisconsin law sources. It's not unusual to get questions from users about some nebulous answer they found on an online advice site or about an article on the weirdest laws. As librarians, you're experts in evaluating resources, but legal topics can sometimes require some unique analysis. You can use AALL's guide to evaluating legal information as a quick rule of thumb. This guide discusses primary versus secondary legal sources, official and unofficial sources, jurisdiction, context, currency, and reliability as quick measures you can set a resource against. Understanding primary and secondary law sources is really important. In addition to what you see listed, agencies or boards may publish decisions, courts have local rules, and professional associations may create codes of conduct. Entire codes of law may be adopted and enfolded by reference into our other laws. Primary sources can be quite varied. Secondary sources are usually privately published, but they can also be published by government agencies, and they can discuss the law or legal issues, provide analysis, and sometimes sample forms or checklists. In the past, print sources were the only official version. In recent years, many online versions of state laws have been designated as official or certified and usually say so somewhere on a main page. You can see the certification statement for the Wisconsin statutes online in their introductory paragraphs. It's also pretty common to find the law reprinted on another website. For example, the top hits for U.S. code citations are often to a website that is not an official federal government site. You can always check the URL on an identity of the site to figure out if you're reading the current law on an official site or if there's a chance you're on a site that has just reprinted the law. The Wisconsin State Law Library website started compiling legal links in the late 90s. It's still a quick resource for us to jump to laws and to find research tutorials. I also want to direct people to our legal topics section, which is where you find research guides, and our Wisconsin law page, which is essentially a list of links to primary law sources. Jurisdiction is a very important factor when evaluating a source. When people start their research online, it can be really easy to find articles and answers that sound correct. However, different states may have different laws, use different terminology, or have small but important differences in what was enacted. Many laws affecting everyday life are also at the local level. And sometimes topics can straddle two or more jurisdictions with overlapping laws, like employment discrimination, federal and state laws on firearms, state and local laws for fences, or the intersection of indigenous peoples' law with state or federal laws. It's important to note that if you don't find something for a particular jurisdiction, like the state of Wisconsin, for example, to broaden or even narrow your search to try and find information there. You can check the site or book you or your patron is using as a source to see if it's operating from a particular perspective as you're evaluating whether or not it's going to be useful to your user. Here's an example of a page on service animals and housing from the Tenant Resource Center. Generally, they write from a particular perspective. However, their pages tend to be well cited with primary law sources, which can make it very easy to actually find the text of the statute or administrative code that they're referencing. So one useful question to ask when you're looking at a source is, if the source advocates a particular position, does it cite to a law or a court case? You can find most primary law online, or you can get help from a law library to request something that's a little harder to find. And now your patron can read the primary source as well. What's the latest update or revision on the topic, and how is the source updated? So this example is an article I found a while ago on LegalZoom, and on the surface it looked like a great article on the laws about notice when a parent moves. But at the time I found this, the law had recently changed, and those changes were not included in this article. And there were no citations to the law in the article, so you couldn't check the source easily to see if the current primary law was something different. And there was also no date on the article, so it was hard to compare it in time. If your source cites to laws or court opinions, that's really helpful. If it just generalizes on a topic or summarizes concepts, its usefulness to your patron may be limited, but that's up to your patron to decide whether or not that's useful to them. If you do have a source, you can often use keywords, find sponsoring legislators or party names, or use any other information in that source to try and find the primary law for federal government, for Wisconsin, or another jurisdiction. I'll often go with a loose rule of threes when I'm evaluating resources. So do I have 3 sources with the same information? Do they meet my other criteria for currency, context, and jurisdiction? If so, that could be my clue to stop looking, but I also encourage you to reach out to law libraries for help before you sink a lot of time into a new research area. There are a lot of questions we get pretty frequently, and we can help your patron by providing copies from books that may not be in your collections. All public librarians in Wisconsin, as government employees, are eligible for a free Wisconsin State Law Library card, which gives you remote access to some of our databases and ebooks for your personal research. We're also open to the public and offer remote help by phone, email, or mail. And the UW Law Library with UW-Madison is a great source. Their reference desk can be reached in a number of ways, and they also offer evening and weekend hours as well. Now let's unpack some of these research concepts and give you an idea of just some of the sources that may be available. Family law, in this example, is a very large area of law, and there are a lot of different types of questions people may ask. Everything from, how do I file for divorce, to, my child's turning 18, how do I end my child support? Here's just a quick sampling of questions, and part of answering each question is to first unpack it and figure out what the patron needs. Ask them if they're trying to find forms or need procedures, and do they need to find the laws, or are they just looking for a quick procedural checklist? In our responses, we usually try to give some basic information plus 1 or more useful sources people can read through. These sources could be links to statutes, county-created legal guides, statewide court forms, or guides created by organizations. In this response, the guide we link to is from a well-known organization, but even better, they thoroughly cite their FAQ table with statute sections, making it easy for your patrons to look at the text of the statute. Part of our regular work is anticipatory as well. So this individual may not be asking for legal clinics, but they may be interested in legal clinics, and we can sometimes err on the side of providing more information rather than less. Not pictured here, our replies also use a disclaimer so people are aware that we're librarians and don't give legal advice. For the sake of brevity, I did paraphrase a source in this reply. However, usually I would try to quote directly or link directly to a PDF page number or include the source otherwise in some way. But often county governments and legal aid organizations put out really useful information that answer common questions people have. The Burnett County Guide in this example is a guide that I refer to frequently for people throughout Wisconsin who have questions about marriage because they've actually written out detailed FAQs on some of these topics. While some county-created guides can be limited to those county procedures, sometimes FAQs address statewide concerns, so those can be rich sources for you to review. This slide's an extremely wordy example of something we get asked about often: how to change or enforce a family court order. And in it we provide some basic information, plus we link directly to forums, guides, and other sources to help people find what they need. In this response, we're almost exclusively directing people towards court system resources and standard forms, except for where we link to some county government guides for people wanting more detail on a particular topic. You can start your research quest in a lot of places. Often library guides are helpful. The State Law Library and UW Law Library both boast research guides on their sites. You can also find research guides on the Marquette's Law Library site as well. The Court System Self-Help Law Center is a simplified but helpful place for many people to start when they're learning about the court. And local county information is also a rich resource for many of those more specific questions. At the State Law Library, there are some sources we use again and again that are not freely available online. So this is one example of a book that can be helpful for a detailed overview of divorce. Many of the Wisconsin books we frequently use are published by the State Bar of Wisconsin. However, NOLO is a popular legal publisher you probably already have in your libraries. NOLO can be a bit generalized for some topics, but it is a helpful entry into the law. And for some areas, like neighbor law, tree law, NOLO is sometimes the best print resource for quick entry into some of the concerns that your patrons may want to research. Law libraries have an advantage in that they often have access to more specialized books and resources, like this book on child abuse and neglect cases. And legal encyclopedias are sources that you're likely to find in law libraries. They're a little different from the typical concept of an encyclopedia, but they are the same in that they generally cover a broad range of legal topics. And they may sometimes also have sample forms. There tend to be many volumes in each set as well, and some of them could be divided by topic further. So this is an example of one that I really like to use. This is published with the Wisconsin Practice Series, and this standalone book provides helpful single chapter overviews of some specific legal issues. And the chapters usually have a section on statutes of limitations and give a summary of issues, which can be useful for people asking those sorts of questions. Law libraries in Wisconsin do tend to have access to more specialized resources, and we are also here to help. So reach out to a law librarian or refer your user to a law library if you'd like to get a little more help or a few more resources. The Wisconsin State Law Library is available, and the UW Law Library is available during the day, and the UW Law Library is also open in the evenings and on weekends. We encourage you to reach out for help with your research questions and to check out our research guides on our websites to get a quick start into researching particular legal topics. Thanks for joining me today.